Welcome back to Morning at NTV. Now we're going to be getting into a conversation that has to do with mental health. It has been one of the conversations through these COVID-19 times, most of you having to stay home, your normal routine interrupted for those who might know a relative who could have tested positive, or perhaps you're just uncertain of what tomorrow holds, and that could be taking a strain on your mental health. Now, one of the things that people are doing in this time is perhaps resorting to things such as phones or drinking or getting addicted to one thing or another to shut out what is happening around you and around them. So today morning in our conversation, we're going to be taking a look at addiction when it comes to mental health. And I'm joined by Bill Bekunda, who is an activist. And he is going to be joining me via online, a virtual conversation is where we'll be having this. Good morning and welcome to Morning at NTV, Bill.
Good morning.
Now, Bill, let's get into the conversation. Straight ahead is that from your experience and how easy it is for someone to get addicted in these times.
The addiction is a dependency on a drug, on something, or on a habit, and you cannot control yourself. Even if it's causing you dire problems with your relationships or with your life financially or otherwise health-wise. Now, during this period, people are at home. People have nothing to do. Others are not working, especially those who are hand to mouth. And there is a lot of stress. There is a lot of fear. There is fear for what's going to happen next. Could I catch the disease? Could I die? Are people going to die? Are they going to attack us? Because when people go hungry, they're going to come knocking at people's gates. There are all kinds of rumors and stories going on around. So there is a lot of fear, and some people are taking on drinking, taking on using drugs to calm themselves. Yes. And then there is also the isolating factor. Isolation is not good for somebody, especially those who are in recovery. Say like me, who is an alcoholic in long-term recovery. Isolation is not good. We are told you cannot do it alone. You need help. We usually have group meetings, group therapies, and we go to see counselors occasionally once in a while, or usually more consistently if you just get into recovery. Now, when there is isolation, you tend to have to fill it in with something. For the person who was suffering an addiction problem, they start filling in that time with using the drug. For those who haven't yet developed a problem, who are prone to developing a problem, they console themselves with a drink, for instance, or with a drug to calm them down, and it works for the time being because they're doing nothing the whole day. So what happens is it becomes the comfort. They start using it gradually, longer and more. When the COVID-19 lockdown was extended by another 21 days, people are like, oh my God, my stock is running out, of booze. They're looking for other ways. So they start becoming dependent on it to satisfy this need. Then, because drugs are psychoactive, the brain now starts getting used. It changes the state of the brain in such an easy way. You don't have to work at it. And therefore, they start becoming dependent on it. And when they become dependent on it, they are now getting prone to developing an addiction.
So, Bill, just to take you back to something that you highlighted, which is in terms of people who are recovering, addicts that are recovering. At this point in time, you say
Yes.
that you perhaps were having group meetings, you are having therapy, you are going out, isolation, and how this is now affecting you. And what are the adopting ways that you're now taking on in your work as an activist?
I personally, I kind of am at an advantageous stage because I've been in long-term recovery, and most of my time I've spent it helping other people get into recovery. I'm a recovery coach at Safe Places Uganda, a treatment center, which is a rehabilitation center where we help people get out of this problem of addictions. Okay? Now, we are sustained by meetings. So because I help people, now it is people calling me. So online, Zoom, like right now we are doing on the phone, people call me and we have discussions and I help them that way. But the meetings the gathering, the meetings like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, they are not possible because we are told about social distancing. And I also don't like the social distancing word. I prefer physical distancing because social distancing can mean stay away from social life. And yet we are dependent on socializing with others to help ourselves get well. So what we do right now is people call in for counseling, for whatever it is that they need at the very moment. But I also reach out to those that I feel need to be reached out to. I personally have got a group of friends. We have a group of friends which is called, we call ourselves the Springs of Renewal. And we occasionally communicate, usually at a minimum of once a week, but we have our group and we keep encouraging each other. It's not only about stop drinking or I've stopped drinking or I'm suffering with this. No, it is also about what can I do next? How do I advance? Because an alcoholic or an addict in recovery who does not make progress will not see the reason as to why they should continue in recovery when there are no benefits. When I was drinking, things were tight. I am not, things are still tight. So we have to help each other to keep growing so that there is no reason to look back. If your life is better ahead, you don't want to look at what was behind. So it is more about communicating online and finding ways. We are trying to be as creative as possible. The one last problem that we have as people in recovery, especially those in early recovery, is that by the time you have overcome your addiction, usually your financial status is not good. So you don't have access to gadgets like this, for instance, that I have. You probably don't even have access to a phone because in your active addiction, if you are dysfunctional, you probably spent all your money on drink. You don't have a job, so you can't afford a phone. At home, they fear to give you a phone because if they give you a phone, you sold it before. They don't trust you yet. They can't give you money. You depend on borrowing, so your brothers, your moms, your sons, depending on the situation. And because of that, they are isolated totally. They are not even allowed to leave the home. So they start getting creative on how do I sort myself out? They are usually lazy. We are usually lazy. When I came out of rehabilitation, I was a lazy person. I didn't want to do exercise. I was, still getting out of it. So that time, they'll start filling it with creativity on how to get a drug. And so I strongly advise that in this time, especially if you know somebody or in your family who has been struggling and is coming out of it or who is still struggling, this is the best time for them to call and actually get help. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And you mentioned something about in this time, if you're in recovery or as just a recovering addict, whether it's long-term or short-term, you should see someone advance, maybe take on an achievement. But how possible is it to gauge achievement and advancement in a time like this?
We don't gauge achievement, we don't gauge advancement. It is a one step at a time, one day at a time process. If we look too far, especially at the beginning of our journey, you fear, will I be sober for the next 30 years? And yet if I look at all I have to do, in the earlier, you are in recovery, you say for the next 1 hour, as long as I'm sober, it's okay. Then it becomes in the next one day, every one day at a time, you keep it simple. We keep it as simple as possible. There are no guarantees. I was sober for a very long time, and then I had a major relapse, which took me back by about 3 years, and then after that, I actually got the point, and that's when I went into helping other people. So it is interesting that we cannot say that if I've been sober for 7 years or 17 years or 21 years, that is a guarantee that, I have crossed the bridge. No, it is one day at a time, trusting God, trusting the recovery program, continually seeking help, checking on your character defects, making sure that you are living a life that actually improves you, improves your status, improves your stand with relations and everything basically. So yeah, one day at a time.
Okay. Now, taking it to, you mentioned the fact, going back to those who might become addicted in this time to different substances. If I am in a house, say with my brother or my sister or my family, I'm not alone in a house. How do I start to notice that this particular person might be actually getting an addiction to something?
Um, as human beings, we like creating excuses. When you see something you don't particularly agree with, you find a reason to give it. You see that somebody is drinking a little bit or taking a little bit more medication than they usually do. And you'll be like, no, it is just the time. There is too much stress. Let him pass his time. And it increases from 1 bottle 1 week ago to 10 to 3 bottles. We are talking about spirits now, probably, or 10 beers or something. And you ignore it because, these are the times. Things are happening. I mean, people say they drink because they are winding up the day. There's too much stress. Human beings will always attach a reason just to feel comfortable. If the person is beginning to become abusive, you talk to them about their drinking or they are using, and they start becoming aggressive, they start hiding away, they start locking themselves in, they start becoming moody. All those are signs, and usually people notice them. But what would I say? Please give him peace. Let him, if we provoke him, if we even talk about it, the problem is going to get worse. Yet in actual fact, that is what we call enabling. You are enabling the situation to get worse. So when you start noticing that a person's behavior is changing from what it originally was, meaning that if it was bad, it's getting worse. If he was hiding, now he's locking himself in totally. Then that is the way you can identify. I mean, for instance, I will say there is one popular one I like talking about, and it's not popular to the rest, but it's popular to me because I talk about it all the time. I say that if you are advised during this period not to smoke, not to drink, because it weakens the immune system and you'll become more vulnerable. If you Google it, you'll see become more vulnerable. We've had these health warnings from World Health Organization. You become more vulnerable to this coronavirus. And you cannot say that, let me put this aside for the time being, for as long as this lockdown is there, because I need it. The need shows that you are dependent on the substance.
Okay.
The failure to stop is an indicator that you are not in control, because for some people they've said, okay, the warning stands, let me just chill it. Many will say, oh, we have not yet seen that warning. Now, the warning is out there. I am sharing it right now.
Yes.
I hope you'll share it even wider after this.
So, Bill,
the warning is, yes.
If the warning is out there, lastly,
yes,
what kind of words should I use? Because the way I will express myself to someone who I think is addicted could either push them farther away, or it could bring them to actually say, okay, perhaps I need to change my ways. So if I am home and I want to tell my relative, my friend, that perhaps I think you have an addiction and I need to do something about it while we're home, how should I say it?
Yes, the first thing you cannot do is tell somebody who is suffering from what you're identifying as a dependency is that they are an addict. It is a stigmatized word, although it's a normal word. If someone calls me that an alcoholic, for me it's okay, I'm used to it. But it is stigmatized. Now you cannot tell them, no, you're going to become an addict, or you're an addict, or no. You keep it simple. I say with everything, you keep it simple. But it is very important to know that the best way to help a person get out of their dependency is to make them as uncomfortable as possible about using.
Okay.
If you don't make them uncomfortable about it, they'll see no reason to stop using or abusing.
Okay.
You see what I mean? It's like freeway.
Yeah.
I will feed you, you can drink, mess up, come, stab me, cause financial loss, and I will give you soup, chicken soup, when you are depressed or when you're coming out of your hangover. That's what I'm saying. So the best way to do it is, first and foremost, get informed. There's a lot of information on the internet. Get informed about the nature of the disease and how to help that particular person. Is it my brother? Is it my spouse? Is it my parent? With that information, when I speak from an informed point of view, they are bound to listen. Yeah. They might be defensive and all that, but they know that now you're beginning to understand them. And with understanding of the person suffering a problem, you are able to actually communicate with them, not talk to them.
Well, thank you so much, Bill, for sharing with us this morning, and may you continue to actually, in these times, use all that you can to share with so many other people. That has been Bill Bekunda, an activist, and we're trying to have a conversation about addiction in these times within lockdown. And one of the things he said is perhaps start to look at the behavior of someone you're living with and staying with. If you see them reaching for a particular drink in this time, and it's just sort of to help them shut out all the fear and uncertainty that looms over their minds, over their heads, perhaps you should say something, but also be sure and be attentive of what you say and how you say it. That has been our conversation when it comes to mental health, in particular addiction. We're now going to take a short break and we'll be coming right back.
You're watching Morning at